Once again, we're tackling some feel-good topics. Things like death, mortality, aging. Welcome to English Hack. Underneath there are some resources which could be even more handy than this video, some questions and good memo answers that might help you to quickly review and recap. Before we get on, the poet's background today is absolutely vital. The poet is Sylvia Plath. She killed herself at the age of 30 by putting her head into a gas oven. It's quite a tragic end, and it really gave her that allure as a poet, as one of those who committed suicide, because there are a number of poets who have done this. There's a mystique to her story and her legacy as a poet. She suffered from bipolar disorder throughout her entire life. She didn't have the treatments that we have today. She underwent electroshock therapy, which you have to be at a desperate stage to even attempt. She had multiple suicide attempts from when she was quite young, and they increased when she was older. So in the last 4 years before she actually did the final attempt and the successful attempt, not an attempt, is it? She had been writing a lot of poetry, and the poem Mirror, she wrote that within the 3 years that came up to her death, and it gets particularly dark. Maybe this is the most disturbing poem in your selection this year. Something we have to get out of the way first is the mirror. This is an unusual poem. Sylvia Plath approached things from very unusual perspectives. Her poetry can be quite ambiguous and difficult to engage with, so maybe hope this doesn't crop up in an exam. In this poem, she has personified a mirror, and the mirror is the speaker of the poem. You'll see this in the clues and how this unravels when you look at it a bit closely. This is the weird perspective that we are looking onto the world from. It gets more disturbing as the poem develops. Go read the poem, imbibe it, absorb it. I'll put a reading that you can go listen to or go access it in the notes. There will be a copy there that you could use to annotate if you want. See whether or not you agree with these intentions or what the poem is, what the core meaning of the poem is. This poem reveals to us our underlying fears concerning our self-image, hence the mirror, our deterioration and our mortality in a universe that is ultimately disinterested and uncaring towards our suffering. And if you think about the poem a bit harder, this is where the poem starts to get a bit more disturbing, which is, I think it's deliberately trying to tempt or lure us to impose our own subjectivity and reactions onto the mirror, revealing how our emotions and struggles and suffering are simply internal projections of self onto an indifferent external reality. That intention was quite abstruse and academic. If you've watched the show Community, one of the startling opening episodes is when the teacher or instructor there, Jeff Winger, he shows to this group of new students a pencil, and he treats it as if it's alive, and he calls it Steve, and then he breaks it, and there's kind of a gasp from everyone in the audience. I'll attach a link, go watch it. It's worth seeing. And he says the following, right, that people can connect with almost anything. People can find the good in just about anything but themselves. Think about what you've seen in the poem, what you've read in the poem, and I think we can see in the woman who looks in the mirror, particularly at the end, how we use things and how we tell stories to project sometimes the terrible things that we find and hide in ourselves. The poem is separated into 2 stanzas of 9 lines, so there's a sense of structure, but mostly it's free verse. We get to see the world, or our world, the world of the woman in the poem, from this interesting perspective. This is an important point in the poem, which is the constant claims that the mirror makes for objectivity. You could get questions directly relating to this. So we've already got that word exact, right? It's very accurate. No preconceptions. It claims that it doesn't come to the world with any judgments about whoever looks into it or whatever it sees. I swallow immediately. Interesting word there. If you think about the fish at the end of the poem. But again, it's just saying it takes a snapshot of whatever is before it accurately. Again, that word unmisted. So there's complete clarity, nothing in the way between the mirror and what it's looking at. There's no love or dislike. And again, it's only truthful and eye of a little god, almost claiming omniscience. So you can see or know everything that's in front of you. Another standout feature with question potential is the structure and the sentence structure used in the poem to reinforce this objectivity. Lots of strong pauses in the middle of lines, and the technical term there is the caesura, right? Hard stops. I am silver and exact, full stop. It is pink with speckles, full stop. The lines themselves, being short and interrupted like that, have this feeling of being very precise and exact. because of those hard stops. So it reinforces that objectivity. On other lines, you have different structural features like the enjambment. I swallow immediately just as it is. So the run on to the next line shows you how quickly the mirror absorbs the image or whatever it is in front of it as it drops down to the next line right next to that word immediately. I also just want to reinforce on this line the mirror claiming that it has the eye of a little god and it's four-cornered. When it says that it's four-cornered, there is a limitation applied to its understanding. It can't see everything fully. It's only limited to that small view of the world. So if that small view is accurate, its view is still not complete because it can't see anything more about the world. Here we get to the most interesting part of the poem, which is essentially a debate. And it's a debate around tone, but it's a debate around the core meaning of what the mirror is claiming. Is the mirror actually objective or not? On the one reading, you can argue the mirror isn't completely objective because its emotions are kind of getting in the way. So you can look at that I swallow immediately just as it is line, and which quickly gulps up anything that comes in front of it, as a sign of frustration. It just wants to be entertained and see something different. Is it a bit bored and frustrated? Again, in those lines at the end, it looks at the wall for so long and it sees these things over and over again. And we're wondering, does that not show frustration? Does that not show boredom or even a kind of a madness on the part of the mirror? On the other hand, and this is the view that I prefer, I would describe the tone as very neutral, disinterested. A great word to use is clinical, because we as human readers, I think, simply project these qualities onto the mirror. So when we read that the mirror has looked for so long at its pink and speckled wall that it sees all day, I don't think the mirror is actually at all bothered by this. But we tend to imagine what it would be like to have to do that for years and years and years and years. And it's a terrifying thought. It's absolutely numbing and boring. I think it's our projection of that onto the mirror, and that the mirror actually isn't feeling these things. It's actually very clinical. And even that line, it's pink with speckles. These short lines are often just observational. It just states what the mirror sees, and it doesn't quite go so far as to give a reaction on the part of the mirror to what it is viewing. So when we cut to the second stanza, things become even more interesting as the character of this woman is introduced. This woman who has obviously grown up with this mirror next to her, and so the mirror has kind of seen her journey through life. But it's from this inhuman perspective, which makes this all very creepy. If you look at this line which says, "Now I am a lake," there's something very odd there, because what was the mirror before it was a lake? The way that I read this line after thinking about the poem quite carefully is that the mirror is a lake in terms of that's what the woman wants the mirror to be at that moment. A lake in this opening stanza is usually quite a tranquil, placid, still place, a place where you can find maybe some peace. It goes on to say, "She bends over me, searching my reaches for what she really is." At this stage of her life, she is looking into herself and she's trying to find meaning in herself, peering at herself image. And what we have here is this idea that in the reaches, the expanse, the surface of this lake, she thinks she can find that meaning. Taking the mirror to always be actually objective. We can explain some of these mysterious phrases in the poem. Often we just have this debate of, is the mirror being possessive or loyal towards the speaker and this woman, or is it just being quite neutral and detached? And I would go with the neutral and detached. So when it says she turns to those liars, it seems like you could say the mirror is jealous of the candles and the moon who get her attention. But in the other reading there is that what the mirror is saying here is that it's objective and truthful, but the candles and the moon, which are this faint, dim, soft light, they hide aging. They don't tell the truth. They're just liars. And there's no anger involved in that statement. Same when it says, "I see her back and I reflect it faithfully." Is the mirror being loyal to this woman who comes to it every morning? I don't think that's the case. I would read faithfully there rather just as another gloss on being objective. It's just saying things as it is, recording things and reflecting things as they are. What is interesting in this poem is I think Sylvia Plath is actually leading us as readers into that debate. She's trying to say to us, are you projecting your emotions onto the mirror? And she gives us these words which are loaded with connotations like faithfully and liars to encourage us to project onto the mirror. And then she suddenly reverts back to the mirror being quite objective. Another one of those tricky phrases is, "She rewards me with tears and agitation." Does the mirror enjoy this? Is that what its reward? Is it being sarcastic there, that the woman isn't grateful enough? No, right? I think he's just reporting back what he sees, and there's no reaction to what the mirror sees. If you follow that argument, there's a powerful contrast between the woman who's looking into the mirror and her intense reactions, her tears and agitation, probably at the signs of herself aging, or maybe obsessions over her beauty and her lack of beauty compared to others when she looks at herself in the mirror and obsesses over her image. And the mirror's reaction, which is again quite cold. I'm important to her. She comes and goes. The mirror reflects just what it sees, and it states quite definitively, clinically, objectively, what it sees. But if there is a reaction, it's our reaction as the readers. The final two lines really do capture the full predicament of the poem, and it's the typical interpretation here, straight back to the concern about death and aging and decay. In me she has drowned a young girl, and in me an old woman rises toward her day after day like a terrible fish. She has drowned a young girl. I think the mirror there shows how, as she has become more obsessed with her image and how she is seen and what she sees in the mirror, she loses all of those innocent qualities of a young person who isn't concerned about aging and death and how they appear. And so it's a sad drowning of your innocence. And then in me, an old woman rises towards her day after day. She is obviously just aging as time goes on, as she returns to the mirror, and like a terrible fish. That is a wonderful ending to the poem, and I think it links directly to that now I am a lake. It is the woman herself who has turned the mirror. Initially it's from being in a lake, initially something she can look into and search and ask questions, and now it transforms into a terrible fish, which is a symbol of mortality and death and age approaching. But that is all on the part of the woman who returns to the mirror. She is turning the mirror into these various metaphors. So I hope you can see here how the woman projects her internal fears and struggles onto the mirror. You can argue with this, and again, there's another completely different way to interpret the poem if you go down the feminist route and the power of the gaze and that line, the god, if you want to interpret that as a male. But I think you can stick to this interpretation as a primary way of looking at what Sylvia Plath is doing. It's the woman projecting her fears onto the mirror, and the mirror is just observing this quite clinically. And even more than that, the poem does take it a step further, and it plays with us as the reader by playing with certain words with lots of connotations. It encourages us to put our own reactions onto how the mirror should be reacting. So it's going through the same process with us. It's encouraging us to project our internal reactions onto the mirror. So again, coming back to that quote, people can connect with anything. People can find good in just about anything but themselves. It goes straight to that internal insecurity that we project on others. How I would connect it to concerns for today is that ChatGPT is the ultimate mirror, right? A reflection of us. And that can become quite disturbing in itself, because this poem shows that even if we want to hold back and not project our internal emotions onto things and we think that we're in control, even when it comes to something just like as simple as a mirror, it's actually very difficult not to put our reactions and emotions onto everyday objects in the world. ChatGPT is even more, and AI systems are even more tantalizing that way. They really do lure us into trusting them and believing them. And no matter how much I think we can separate that and say, okay, obviously we'll just understand it's not a conscious being as yet, and we won't get involved with it. There is such a danger. Even if we say that, we could still be lured into trusting it perhaps more than we should, connecting and forming relationships with the system, with the AI, in a way that could be quite damaging or harmful if you think about it too closely. To sum up, here are some of the key vocab and concepts that you're obviously going to find in this poem. Note that word preconceptions. It's to judge something before encountering it, used by the mirror to claim how objective it apparently is, which I do think it is objective in the poem. And then to The tone, clinical, matter of fact, cold, just to show detached, unbiased judgment. Mortality is a nice word to use in answering questions, so that state of being subject to death. Okay, standard technical things, so always be aware: tone, diction, connotations. Standing out in this poem, speaker and personification. Be prepared for speaker questions and showing how the speaker is in fact a mirror, which is very odd. Metaphors, there are lots of loaded metaphors in the poem, and so there's that God metaphor, there's the lake, and be careful how you answer those, and always state the mirror is being compared to this, and this is the effect of that comparison. And if you take my argument in the second stanza, a lot of the metaphors, I think, are being imposed by the woman looking at the mirror when she confronts her own internal fears. Structure questions really stand out. So sudden pauses in the caesura, showing how controlling and exact the mirror is being, and clever uses of enjambment. Not many technical features in this poem. The hard part about this poem is its potential for ambiguity and the different interpretations you can bring to it. Add some comments here if you want to think I've missed out something glaring. I think that there is a lot of scope for different interpretations. Sylvia Plath's poems work like that. There's this ambiguity which generates many interesting dynamics.